I've spent the last 10 days playing the Switch 2 non-stop. And today I can finally tell you why I cannot put this thing down. And this last week, I really tried to put this thing to the test. Not only testing out as many games as humanly possible, both the Switch 2 exclusives and Switch games to see if there's any difference, but I also took the Switch 2 out and about with me to see if this was more than just a home console. And today we're going to be going through absolutely everything, both good and bad, that I've learned through my 50 hours with the Nintendo Switch 2. But if you're worried that this is merely nothing more than a Switch Pro, I can assure you that is definitely not the case. Not only does this look and feel more premium than the Nintendo Switch, but it's really in how the Switch 2 games look and play that really makes this feel like a huge leap from the Nintendo Switch. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is actually probably the most important thing when it comes to a new console, and that is the games. And there's really three main categories that we want to talk about when we're discussing it. The first category are the Switch 2 exclusive games, which at the moment includes Mario Kart, Survival Kids, and I guess Welcome Tour if you really want to count that. The second category are Switch games which had a Switch 2 upgrade, and this includes not only the games which have a paid upgrade, like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and Fantasy Life, but there's also a whole bunch of games which Nintendo have provided free upgrades for as well, including Echoes of Wisdom and the newly announced Splatoon 3 update as well. And the final category of games on the Switch 2 are just Nintendo Switch games, to see if these inherently play any better now they're on a more powerful system. So let's start off with the big one, which is Mario Kart World, which I think is Nintendo's first and only true Switch 2 exclusive as of this moment. And I honestly think this game is absolutely fantastic. I genuinely thought that Mario Kart 8 was going to be the peak of karting chaos, especially when they let us do custom modes that included making the only item be blue shells. Yet Mario Kart World somehow manages to top that chaos, as not only do we have 24 players in every single race, which is absolutely wild, as if you're in first place and you get blue shelled, you can drop all the way to like 20th position just by the single hit. But I think the best addition to Mario Kart World is actually the knockout mode. And this truly needs to be standard for every future Mario Kart game, and is definitely my most played as of right now. And if you didn't know, the knockout game mode essentially means that there are checkpoints along the race where the last 4 people will get knocked out who cross the line. And they've made sure to make passing each checkpoint be as stressful as possible. As with every person that crosses the checkpoint, you get to hear a noise, and once you get really close to the checkpoint, you don't even get to see what position you're in, you just have to wait and see if you've been knocked out. And this mode is particularly fantastic when you play in online. And if I'm being honest, I thought I was half decent at Mario Kart till I played the online mode and I realized that I absolutely sucked. Now, the other addition to Mario Kart World is the open world that you can go and explore. This is a really fun way to practice all the new skills that this game introduces, like being able to grind on rails and wall jumping. And there's also challenges in this mode that you can complete, and these will often show you alternative paths on some of the tracks to help teach you a brand new route. Overall though, I found like the open world felt a little bit empty at times, and whilst it was fun, I played the online modes an awful lot more. After playing hundreds of hours of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I honestly didn't feel like there was much room for improvement for Nintendo to do in a new Mario Kart game. But thankfully, I turned out to be incredibly wrong, and this feels like a new high for Mario Kart. Not only are all the new mechanics a lot of fun, but it looks absolutely incredible, both docked and in handheld. And I honestly feel like this was probably one of the best games they could have picked as the first Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. Now the real question is this worth full price? And I think the answer is quite simply, I don't think so, or at least not yet. However, I personally got Mario Kart as part of the bundle, and for that price, it is absolutely worthwhile. In fact, I genuinely think I've already got my money's worth. The thing I'm really interested in knowing is if Nintendo plan on updating the game going forwards with new maps and stuff like that, like they did for Mario Kart 8, but I think only time will tell for that one. Now, the other Switch 2 exclusive that I haven't really mentioned, for good reason, is Welcome Tour. This honestly would have been a fantastic game if it came free with the Switch 2, but it being paid just means it's not worth the money at all. Next up, let's talk about the Switch games, which received a Switch 2 upgrade. Now, my main issue with these games is it's not always easy to tell if the Switch 2 upgrade has already been applied to them. It's pretty easy to tell for the games where you need to pay to upgrade, as you actively need to go into the eShop and purchase it, and then it will download. And it does then appear as Switch 2 software in your home menu. Which, side note for a minute, I am so glad they finally fixed the eShop. It looks so much better, and I love the fact that if you hover over any of the games, it will start playing the trailer for them, so you can have a little glimpse before you click into them. I also really like this page where it gives you suggestions as to what games to play. The eShop has always been such a mess, so this personalized approach to giving you new games to play is something I really like. Things are a little bit trickier though with games with free Switch 2 upgrades. Like for example, Splatoon 3, it still appears as a Nintendo Switch software, even though I do know it has already had the update to it, so I wish there was a way that Nintendo made this a little bit clearer as to whether you are playing on the Switch 2 version or not. Now, by far, one of the upgraded Switch games that I've been playing the most of is actually Tears of the Kingdom. And this port is absolutely gorgeous. And not only does it look great in docked mode, but in handheld as well. And there's something about the HDR that just makes the colors pop so much more when you're running outside of the world. When I bought my Switch 2, I also upgraded to the Online Plus expansion pass, which means that both the Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom upgrade were for free. So if you're looking at playing those a lot and also maybe jumping into the GameCube games, it might be worth the upgrade for you as well. It also comes as no surprise that I've been playing an awful lot of Fantasy Life on the Switch 2. This almost looks as good as it does on my PC now, apart from the fact that there's a really annoying line that they haven't patched out yet. But there's genuinely such a difference between the Switch version and the Switch 2 version, and I'm so glad there is really only £2 difference in the price. So to me, this is an upgrade that is well worth it. Another game that I have jumped back into playing is No Man's Sky, as they kind of hit us out of nowhere with the news that they're coming out with a free Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade. Now, No Man's Sky on the Nintendo Switch was easily one of the best ports of all time, as this is an open world space exploration game with no loading scenes in it whatsoever. And not only does the Switch 2 version both look and play so much better than the Switch version did with updated graphics, it also allows you to access the full game, as unfortunately the Nintendo Switch version didn't actually have all the latest updates and multiplayer available. No Man's Sky has always been one of my favourite indie games, and to see it be more accessible than ever and on offer at the moment makes me so unbelievably happy. It's definitely a must play for the Switch 2. I also decided to check out the brand new free update to Splatoon 3. Now, this fills me with a lot of hope, as this was just announced a few days ago to be coming to the Switch 2, and this maybe means that this isn't the end of Nintendo doing free upgrades for Switch games. And I definitely noticed with the online games that I was playing that it seems as though a lot of people have jumped back into Splatoon 3. So if you have the game already, it's definitely worth giving a go on the Switch 2. Now, I did test out some Nintendo Switch games to see if their performance was increased at all on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I can say my results varied. So the first game I really wanted to test out was Animal Crossing New Horizons, and this actually had a noticeable difference. First of all, there was a noticeable decrease in loading times on the Switch 2, not only in how quickly your save loaded up at the beginning of the game, but also when you were to walk into buildings or the airport, it would be a lot shorter. The other performance boost we got to see is actually on laggy islands. So if you played a lot of Animal Crossing, you'd know that if you decorated your island enough, you can actually cause the Nintendo Switch to lag and drop frames, and even have items really weirdly pop in on the screen. And this was a little better on the Switch 2, which was not something I was expecting, and it's also not something that Nintendo advertised. But actually they've done a fantastic job with the backwards compatibility, allowing for some performance upgrades of some of the games. I also noticed for Disney Dreamlight Valley that the game stuttered a lot less than it did on the Nintendo Switch. However, one thing that couldn't be fixed in any of these games are unfortunately the graphics. So Disney Dreamlight Valley does look the same, albeit playing a little better. I also decided to test out one of the worst Switch ports that I knew of, which is Lake. And unfortunately, as you can see right here, the Nintendo Switch could only do so much. Not only do the graphics still look not great, but the game still has some substantial stutters when you're running around as well. So essentially, some games will see a little bit of a boost, but if a game's badly optimized for the Switch, there's not really much the Switch 2 can do to save it. The next thing I really tested out with the Switch 2 is handheld mode. Now, as you can see, the Switch 2 is noticeably bigger than the Nintendo Switch, but it being larger does have some benefits. I think the Joy-Cons, for example, have really benefited from the larger size of the Switch 2. They feel a lot more comfortable to hold, and the sticks themselves are larger and just feel a lot more like a normal controller, and really bridges the gap between the Pro Controller and the Joy-Cons. I also didn't expect to notice how much larger the screen is, but it really made a huge difference. And even though it's not an OLED screen, the fact that it's 1080p and HDR meant that I didn't really find myself missing the OLED screen all that much. The Switch 2 screen, however, did have a few downsides when it came to trying to play outside. You see, I decided to put the screen to the ultimate test, and I found one of the only sunny days in the UK for the entire year to go down to the beach and test it out. And not only did this highlight just how glossy the screen is, but also that the screen itself could do with being a little bit brighter than its current max setting. Now, turning off the automatic brightness did help a little bit with this, but this footage here shows just how glossy the screen is and how difficult it was to see the game underneath my own reflection. Now, don't get me wrong, it was playable in the broad daylight, but still, I wish it was a little bit better. But if we're being honest, you're probably not looking to play games in the broad daylight anyway, and the most realistic setting you're going to be in is probably the shade. And this was a much better experience. I could see everything on the screen very clearly. So I think if you take this out and about with you on the train, in the car, that sort of thing, so long as the sun isn't streaming straight into your window, you're probably going to be absolutely fine. The other downside about the screen, which you could probably see right here, is the fact that it is so easy to mark. I didn't have a screen protector on my Switch for less than half a day, which means all of the marks you see here is just from a couple of hours of use. So if you are someone who's just bought a Switch 2, I definitely say put a screen protector on before you even touch it. That being said, I do want to make clear it's not actually the glass itself that's being scratched. It's actually the film which Nintendo have put over the top that I think is responsible for not only the marks, but also the glossiness. Now, unfortunately, you cannot remove this film without voiding your warranty, so it's definitely not something I advise. So your best bet is to just put a screen protector on top and use it that way. Now, when it comes to playing in handheld mode, much like the Switch, it was a little bit uncomfortable as it's just so thin. So I did wind up going on Amazon and finding a grip. I literally went for anything that just wasn't plain black, and I got the Skull & Co grip, which I do really like. Now, if I'm being honest, I do prefer the fact that the Switch is too thin over being too large like something like the Steam Deck. Because at least if the Switch is too thin, I can add something to it to make it comfortable, whereas something like the Steam Deck, I can't actually make smaller for myself. So this to me is the best way round. Also, once I started using a grip, I couldn't really notice the weight difference between the Switch and the Switch 2. The one thing I did notice, however, both when I was out and about and enjoying the Switch 2 at home, is the battery life. Now, I don't think I've played any game that got me quite as low as a 2-hour battery life. However, some games like No Man's Sky, Fantasy Life, and Mario Kart have probably got closer to the 4-hour mark, which is a little bit less than I was hoping for, especially if you're someone who likes to travel a lot. 4 hours isn't a whole lot of time if you don't have a charger. Much like the Nintendo Switch though, I do expect them to probably update this in the future, maybe in a couple of years to be a little bit more efficient. But for the time being, I guess I need to carry around a battery pack for longer journeys. Now, Nintendo have also acknowledged that there are battery life problems. There's an article down below on how to fix it, because they're essentially saying that the percentage battery left that you see on your screen isn't actually accurate. And they've given us an article on how to fix that, which I'll leave down below. Now, the next thing I put to the test was the multiplayer. Seeing as the Switch 2 Direct had such a large focus on it, I wanted to see if it was worth my time. Now, this honestly did work a lot better than I was expecting. But if I'm being honest, this isn't really something I see myself using all that much. Now, I did manage to pick up both the official Nintendo webcam and also the Hori Piranha Plant webcam, where this one's 1080p and this one is 480p, to put those to the test. Now, do be warned, both of these are incredibly wide angle, so they're going to capture absolutely everything inside of your room. So you're definitely going to want to make use of the zoom function. And if I'm being honest, the background remover is not Nintendo's best work. It looks incredibly rough and it's not something I'm going to be using. And honestly, you don't need either of these if you already own a webcam, as those work both USB and USB-C with the Switch 2 as well. So these probably not worth your money. The thing I'll probably use the most on the Switch 2 is probably the voice chat. And I can't see myself using the webcam at the bottom of the screen or even the screen share function all that much. Although I do like that they're options, because now if my dad gets stuck in a game, I can at least see what he's doing to try and help. That being said, I do enjoy some of the inbuilt functions. Like in Mario Kart, you can literally look at someone's face as you blue shell them and see the light leave in their eyes as you overtake them, which I do love. And in case you're worried, the webcam will only show your picture to the friends that you've given permission to. So don't worry, your face won't show up on random Mario Kart lobbies. So even though the webcams weren't all that useful going forward, I am excited to see what games will use it. I know Mario Kart Jamboree is going to have some webcam functionality, and considering most people have webcams at home, this should mean that most people can join in, even if they don't spend a bomb on one of these, which I think is fantastic. The final thing I do quickly want to touch on is the Pro Controller. Now, when I first got this, I said, whilst it's nice, you probably don't have much of a reason to upgrade from the original Pro Controller to this one. But after spending quite a lot of time with this, I don't know if I hold that view anymore, or at least not as strongly. First of all, the original Pro Controller can't wake up your Switch 2. It's only the Switch 2 Pro Controller that will allow you to hold the home button to wake up the Switch 2, which I think is really annoying, but it is what it is. The back buttons have got a surprising amount of use from me. I've been programming them for different things in each of the games and using them a surprising amount. I've also been using the headphone jack a lot, which was not something I was expecting, as I can just sit and play games on the TV with my headphones in and not have to worry about connecting it with Bluetooth. But I think the thing I love the most about the Switch 2 Pro Controller is how much the sticks glide. On the Switch Pro Controller, you can kind of feel like plastic on plastic whenever you move the sticks around, but on the Switch 2, you don't feel that. I also think the D-pad's a lot better on the Switch 2 Pro Controller as well. It just feels a little bit less mushy and a little bit more responsive. Is it worth the price difference or buying a whole new Pro Controller? Probably not, but if you do wind up buying one, I think you will see a difference. I think it's safe to say I had pretty high expectations about the Switch 2 when I first bought it, but I honestly wasn't expecting this thing to blow me away quite as much as it did. This has not only led to me gaming way more in my own home, but I also can't get over the difference between games. It's so extreme that when I went to film footage on my Nintendo Switch, I was really surprised in the difference I noticed between 1080p and 4K. But I think the most exciting thing about the Switch 2 is its future. As the reality is, right now, the Switch 2 is the weakest that it will ever be. And it's only gonna get better from here. As each month we'll be getting a brand new first party game. With Donkey Kong coming out in a month's time, we have a new Pokemon game, Metroid, and a brand new Hyrule Warriors on the way. And we're also gonna be getting more and more third party support as time goes on as well, especially with how wild the sales figures have been for the Switch 2. And with more directs inevitably coming in the next couple of months, we have more than ever to look forward to. So even though for many the game library isn't quite there yet for them to justify a Switch 2, once you do find a game that makes you want to purchase the Switch 2, I genuinely don't think you're going to be disappointed. But I'd love to know what you think of the Switch 2 down below, and if you want to see me at the midnight release to pick mine up, click this video here.